Thank you, sir. I won't take long, but I do indicate the opposition doesn't support this motion, and I'll explain why. The suspension of standing orders should be available to the parliament to undertake on those occasions when, through exceptional need, importance and particularly urgency of a matter, the possibility of complying with not only the conventions but to suspend standing orders, the standing orders themselves, is not available, and therefore it behoves the government, if they wish to suspend standing orders, to make a case to do so. That said, we understand from media commentary and indeed from the comment in question time today from the Minister that the government wishes to pass this legislation through the House today, or perhaps today and tomorrow. To be clear to the House on what this motion is about, it is not about whether or not indeed this bill could be dealt with this week. It's whether or not this bill can be dealt with today. The normal course of events would see the bill received from the Legislative Council and then, of course, read. The bill lay on the table for a day. The standing orders require that. And indeed, if the government then wanted to proceed with debate tomorrow, there'd be nothing in the standing orders preventing them to do so. There'd be a convention preventing them from doing so, which when I was first Leader of the House on our first day, we indicated to the Labor Party at that time that we wanted a supply bill dealt with in the second week of Parliament after the address and reply had been dealt with. And the Leader of the House now, then Manager Opposition Business, can I say aggressively and robustly put forward a point of view that a supply bill, which is of course a very normal bill that everyone in the House will be familiar with, only a few lines, a supply bill had to lay on the table for 10 days to comply with the convention. And the last Parliament, of course, did on occasion move bills through more quickly. Not only because of COVID, but mostly because of COVID, where there were bills that needed to be dealt with urgency. There were a couple of bills where the government and the opposition were in such robust and hungry and confident agreement on the matter that there was no concerns raised about suspensions of standing order. And indeed, in those circumstances, standing orders were suspended with the support and concurrence of both parties. The bill that is being proposed today, sir, is one that sees quite significant powers being conveyed into the government, a fairly significant change, not just to the community's expectations or indeed the law's expectations, to the Labor Party's expectations of what constitutes heritage protection. And we well remember the Deputy Premier's fervent and robust advocacy in relation to heritage matters prior to the election. So there is a significant change in government policy, a significant change in law, a significant change in powers available to a government to be conveyed by this bill. For those reasons, it's not unusual, sir, for the Parliament to consider these matters, and having them lay on the table for at least a day, as the standing orders require, for 10 days, as the convention requires, is indeed good practice, sir, for a bill that has complexity, to enable it to be considered, for all of the matters relating to that bill to be considered in depth. And, sir, there are occasions when bills are of such urgency that governments seek to suspend standing orders. There's usually a reason, a time-related reason, why matters must be dealt with quickly. That seems absent in relation to this matter. We're talking about a proposal that would enable the government to change the building of the Women's and Children's Hospital from the project that was advocated by the previous government, which would have seen works completed by 26-27, but indeed starting soon, or if not already by now, to a new policy that this government proposes that sees no work taking place this week, or this month, or this year, allegedly early work starting at some stage next year, for a project to be completed sometime next decade. And so the key thing missing, and why we propose to oppose the suspension of standing orders, is that far from failing to make a case as to why this matter has to be dealt with this week, which it can be under standing orders, or today, as this motion requires, the government hasn't yet made a case why this motion needs to be dealt with, or this bill needs to be dealt with this year. And so therefore, our presumption is that at the very least, having the opportunity to read the bill, consider, take feedback from relevant stakeholders and look into the details to ensure that there are no unintended consequences. That's the process of good parliamentary procedure from a government that's confident in its material. If it is not so confident in its material as that, then so be it. But it seems to me that the only reason that the government wants to progress this quickly is because they're concerned about political campaigns in the member for Adelaide's electorate. Now, that's not a good enough reason to suspend standing orders. But we recognise the government has the numbers. We recognise they're going to push this through. We recognise that whatever the merits of the bill, they are going to ask the Parliament to deal with it in a very unusually quick time. And so therefore, that's what is likely to happen. But nevertheless, we don't see why this should be dealt with today and take precedence over other business, and indeed be dealt with not in the usual matter. And therefore, I oppose the motion.